What is up, my brethren? I am Jarvis Black. Thank you for coming back. I'm a rhymer now. I'm a rhymist. Natalia Barnett was on Dr. Phil this week. Oh my God, it is a doozy to unpack. Holy shit, you guys, this is gonna get crazy. I don't know what to tell y'all, but this one is juicy. So I have been trying to sort through this this interview. I don't even know where to start, but let's just dive into this craziness. Last week, I said that there wouldn't be much in the way of updates, and then I saw somebody commented that she was going to be on Dr. Phil, so here we are. There's a number of things that stood out to me about this interview that I want to touch on.
How old are you?
I'm 16.
When is your birthday?
September 4th, 2003.
So right off the bat, Natalia claims that she was born in 2003. She's sticking to the story that she's 16 years old. I find it interesting that she's sticking with that 2003 date because in 2010, the doctors said that she was actually 8 years old. Again, 2 years later in 2012, they said that she was 11 at that time. Based on what the bone density that the doctors have looked at, they're saying that she's at least 2 or 3 years older than she's saying that she is. Also, can we address the fact that she has like this New Jersey or New York accent? I know that she says that she was with a number of families, and she's like 30, and then Dr. Phil's like, what, 30? Dr. Phil's like, you were like 30, and she's like, I don't know, I don't remember. Then she says like one of them was like in New York or something, but she couldn't have been with them that long. How does she develop like this New York, New Jersey accent when she wasn't with these families that long, but she was like in the Ukraine until she was 6 years old and has no Ukrainian accent? Like something about that just seems weird and doesn't add up. So back to the 30 families thing, Natalia says that Christine said that she was with like 30 families, which doesn't really make sense. I mean, if she was in like foster care or something, she's going to be bouncing around from like home to home, but 30 different homes, like where did Christine get that number? Was that just like made up? Was it foster homes? Was it adoptive parents? There was at least that we know of one other adoptive parent, and it sounds like in this interview, Natalia kind of says that there were 2 other adoptive families that gave her up. I don't really know where that came from, but also how did she bounce around to so many families so quickly, and why? Also, why doesn't she have records of any of this? Wouldn't there be records of the foster families that she was with, the adoptive parents that she was with? Why does it seem like nobody has records of anything? This is where the story gets really interesting because she talks about being with 2 other families that it sounds like adopted her. And in the first one, she says that they gave her up because she was wrestling on the floor with the son. The mother claimed that Natalia tried to break her son's arm.
They had 2 boys, and one of the boys, me and him were really close, so we like wrestled almost, but I landed on his arm wrong, so the mom thought I was trying to break his arm. So then that's when she was like, I can't do this anymore.
Natalia is volunteering this story, which seems weird. She's like dismissing it, but it actually kind of lends credence to what, surprisingly, I wouldn't have thought that was possible, but she's lending credence to what Christine and Michael are saying. If other parents think that she was intentionally malicious towards their children, that aligns with what the Barnetts are saying. And she's readily admitting this on Dr. Phil, and nobody's saying anything like, this is weird. And don't get me wrong, I am not trying to justify the Barnetts, what the Barnetts did, or even their stories, which don't add up a lot of the time, that don't even really make logical sense to me a lot of the time. But I think it's weird that there are multiple other families, because the second family she talks about, she says that, oh, things were great. She says their name was it the DePauls, I think? Yeah, she says the DePauls. She says that things were fine, things were great there, but they gave her up because of financial reasons.
I don't remember all the families. I just remember this one family that, because I was with them the most.
And what was their name?
They were the DePauls.
DePauls. And how'd it go there?
It was good. Me and their daughter, we were close.
And why did you not stay there?
I think it was like a money issue.
Now, why are these families giving her up? Maybe it's because of her dwarfism and they're being prejudiced and they are immediately thinking that she's bad or they don't want to have to deal with the potential medical issues. Maybe that was why there was the money issue with the second family. Maybe the Barnetts are being discriminatory and she's actually like telling the truth about everything. But it just seems odd that multiple families adopted her and gave her up before she even got to the Barnetts. And there's another family claiming that she was violent towards their child. Okay, then Natalia says something really, really interesting. She said that after a surgery is when Christine started questioning her age.
What was your first clue that it was heading down a bad road?
It was after my surgery when she started questioning about my age. And then, like, everything started happening after that one moment.
Now, I found this really, really fascinating because that means that Natalia is admitting that Christine and Michael were questioning her age. We don't know if Christine and Michael were just making up this entire age thing, trying to get her age changed just so that they could abandon her and move to Canada. And if they're legitimately questioning her age, then maybe that means that in their minds, at least, whether or not it's true, in their minds, they don't think that they've done anything wrong and that they actually aren't necessarily lying about how they feel or what they think about her age. Maybe they are telling the truth because there's been a lot of what they've said that just didn't make sense to me and it felt like they were lying. Maybe Christine and Michael weren't acting with malicious intent, which I was definitely questioning. Maybe that was the case. One part that I thought was weird when Dr. Phil was saying that the medical paperwork wasn't given to the Barnetts by Natalia directly, and so therefore she wasn't the one trying to defraud the Barnetts. That doesn't make any sense because Natalia could have lied to doctors, she could have lied to the adoption agency, she could have lied to any number of people that would have falsified the documents for her based on what she was telling them. And also the medical professionals in the Ukraine or other people could have made up things, created this false paperwork, and then Natalia could have just gone along with it. It doesn't exonerate her of lying about any of it just because she didn't directly give the medical paperwork to the Barnetts.
We were told in the medical paperwork that we had that she was 6 years old.
Okay, now, in the medical paperwork they were told she was 6 years old. And then they say that you're a scam artist. You didn't give them the medical paperwork. Someone had to provide that. If there's a scam here, it doesn't emanate from you.
Right.
One part that cracked me up was Dr. Phil asking her about the bleach in the coffee, and she corrects him and says, "It was lemon pledge." She goes on to say that she wasn't trying to like poison Christine, but that part cracked me up. Like she knew exactly what he was talking about.
Sprayed bleach in her coffee.
It was lemon pledge for tables.
And she actually has footage of you doing that.
So we had missed a spot. So what I did was I scooted the chair over so I could get up there, and I scooted her coffee back so I could grab the thing because it was in front of it. So I scooted it back, and I grabbed it. She came out and was like, "What are you doing?" And then she claimed that I tried to spray it in her coffee. You could look in her coffee. There was nothing.
And that was an interesting thing, really, with that whole piece of it, because maybe she sprayed lemon pledge in the coffee. Maybe she didn't. Maybe Christine was already questioning her age and questioning things. And so maybe Christine was like just extra suspicious and being ridiculous about the entire situation. Maybe Natalia got mad and threatened to spray it in her coffee or something, and maybe it didn't actually happen. Neither Natalia's, if you watch Natalia's version of the events, it doesn't really make sense. And if you listen to Christine's version of the events, it doesn't make sense either. That's why I feel like the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. I don't know. I have to say something about this interview and Natalia's responses just seemed disingenuous to me. And I've been somebody who's been kind of on the fence and not wanting to take the Barnetts just at their word for everything that's happened and wanting to hear Natalia's side. But now that I've heard her side of it and I've heard the Barnett's side of it, neither side adds up. Neither side really makes complete sense to me, but something about it just felt weird and off. Dr. Phil asked Natalia if she thought the Barnetts should be punished. And she gave this kind of weird, convoluted, roundabout response and then implicated that after they do their time and whatnot. So Dr. Phil further pressed her on it, and she basically said, yeah, they should be punished because it's not right to do that to a child, which I thought was a really weird response. It's like she's talking about somebody else, and maybe it's just sort of disassociation because of the trauma, or maybe she's not telling the truth, but it just seems weird. Wouldn't you be like, what they did to me wasn't right? What they did to me, like talking about it in the first person?
They're being criminally prosecuted. They've been charged at least. What do you think should happen to them?
I just want them to give up on the whole charade. Like, I don't want them to just keep on with this. I just want it to be over. I want them to be able to have their normal lives back after this is all over and they did their time.
So you think they should go to jail for abandoning a child, endangering a child, whatever the charges might be?
Like, I don't want them to, but with what happened, it's not right to do that to a child.
Dr. Phil comes out and says that she doesn't come across like a 16-year-old, and he says that it's because she's more mature because of everything that she's went through. But in the same interview, he also says that her maturity would have been less based on what he's seen of kids going through foster care and having to deal with that process, her being in the Ukrainian group home, that she would have been a year or more immature for her age, and references that when he's talking about her living in her own apartment. Which is it? Because that doesn't really make sense. Dr. Phil contradicts himself.
The hardest thing that you have to deal with now is you don't come across as 16 years old. She was forced to grow up ahead of her time. And so you come across as much more mature than a 16-year-old.
The part where Cyntia Mans is talking about her age and like when she encountered Natalia, she said that a neighbor called her and she went down there and she like asked Natalia if she was 22. Like, are you 22? Natalia's like, yeah, I'm 22. Cynthia's like, you're not 22. You come home with me. And then brings her home. She basically says, look at her. She can't be 22. That is the whole point. Her dwarfism makes it difficult to tell what age she is and isn't going to look 22. Taking her from her apartment and bringing her back to the Mans household was just based on looking at her and going, you're not the age you say you are, and that's it. And I also wonder if that really is what made it easy for Natalia, if Natalia is an adult and not a child, to fall back into being adopted by another family yet again and pretending to be a child if she is pretending, because it sounds like Cynthia just sort of asserted her will. Like, why wouldn't she just go along with Cynthia in a previous video where somebody who had adopted children from the Ukraine had said that their paperwork is sketchy and that they look at children and go, you're this age because you're this height. That could have very possibly been what happened. And Cyntia Mans basically did the same thing, looked at her and go, no, you're this age.
And my friend called me and was like, you need to come down here right away. So I go over there and she said, she's telling me she's 22. Like, look at her. She's not 22. And I go, are you 22? She said, yeah. But you could tell that it was just like, yeah, because I was told,
That's
yeah.
what I'm supposed to say.
Mm-hmm. So I go, okay. And she said, I have my own apartment. And I'm like, no, you don't.
So Dr. Phil makes the point that an 8-year-old wouldn't be able to survive on their own. And I don't know about you, but my son, when he was 8, wouldn't have been able to live in an apartment by himself. It doesn't matter if there were frozen boxed food in the freezer that he could microwave. He wouldn't be able to survive and live on a day-to-day basis in his own apartment at 8 years old.
You go into an apartment functioning at 6 or 7. A 6 or 7-year-old child living in an apartment alone for a year? That's just not believable to me. How does that happen?
I think that she groomed her before she did this to have her ready for this.
But in terms of activities of daily living, health, food, stove, working with an oven, a 6-year-old child just simply doesn't know how to do the activities of daily living for independent existence.
Right.
So just like I've called out Christine and Michael's side of it for not making sense and not seeming plausible in a lot of different areas, I feel like Natalia's side of it doesn't quite make sense either. And I just feel like both sides are probably lying in this case, and I don't really know what the actual truth is. I feel like there's pieces missing from both sides of the story. I don't know everything. I wasn't there. The people that were there are the only ones that know the truth. Hopefully we'll find out the truth when the trial happens in January. Well, that's it for today's video. If you enjoyed this, hit that like button. If you like what I'm doing here, please subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and I'll catch up with you soon. Thanks for stopping by, San Diego.